We are live.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour. I'm Brandon Tessers.
I'm Olivia Candosia, but this is not therapy because Brandon is a licensed therapist, but this is not therapy. I messed up.
I am a licensed therapist, but this is not therapy.
There you go.
For very, very many reasons. And Olivia is an intern therapist, and this is still not therapy for very many reasons. What this is just an open conversation. Olivia and I are here talking with one another on stream and talking with you all, doing our best to guess who you are and what you might be interested in and how you're being impacted by the things that we're saying. If for those of you who can or who are willing and able to participate in the chat, we appreciate that because it gives us more information to base those guesses about who you are and what you're interested in on. We'll just be talking about whatever we're talking about, and you all can jump in at any point. Please don't worry about like staying on topic or not wanting to interrupt or distract or anything like that. That's not how this works. This is just a conversation like any, and it will go wherever it goes. And we'd rather talk about whatever you're interested in than whatever we're talking about. We get plenty of time to talk to one another about whatever we want to talk about. This is for all of us together. Just like it'd be weird if like two friends are sitting in a group of people and talking about something that only the two of them care about. Like you can do that another time. We're in a group.
We're streaming on 3 platforms right now: YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. We'll be reading the comments out loud because you can only see the comments that are coming from the platform that you're on.
Yeah. We work with a private therapy practice called Effective Artistry. We do individual, couples, family, and group therapy with people in the state of Illinois and Wisconsin. We also work with a couple of coaches who can work with people all over the world via the internet. And we also are doing some non-therapy groups, workshops and things like that are open to people all over, including one that Olivia is working on. It is open to people all over the world. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. How's it going?
Good. Happy spring weather.
Oh my gosh, I love this weather. I love it so much.
Yeah,
The
it's
sunlight.
amazing.
I care more about the sunlight than the temperature.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the sun is different. I guess literally we are closer to it in the summer than in the winter. But like the sunlight is different than it is even when it's sunny in the winter, and I love it. I was not meant to live in a place that is cold and dark. Some people are. And I don't mean this as a personality thing, although I think those things like go along with it too. But literally, like this is part of what the variations in different humans is in response to is like the climate, the weather, the sunlight in the area where like your ancestors evolved. I do not.
No.
I come in part from some people that are evolved for like cold, northerly, seasonal climates, but those genes from the islanders are strong in me.
Oh yeah, my Cuban genes. Like, when's island life?
There are times when we'll go on vacation, like we go to Mexico, and Susan, my wife, will look at me and she'll be like, I feel bad because you're clearly meant to live in this kind of like my hair is different,
Yeah.
my skin is different, everything is different.
I lost my first tooth in Cancun.
Really?
And I got a peso under my pillow. It was a big deal.
That's
I felt
funny.
so special.
Actually, my son, either his first or his second tooth that he lost was on an airplane. I think we were going to Utah, though, not Mexico. I don't remember. But this weather is lovely. I have been outside so much.
Yeah. I'm staying up later too, just because I'm like happier. I'm like, I don't want to go to bed. The days are so nice.
Well,
I don't know if that's anything related or like.
Well, I wouldn't say because.
Okay.
But you're staying up later and you are happier, and maybe those things are related.
Who knows?
But because is
an impossible thing to answer.
When it comes to like what people are thinking and feeling and doing, yeah. I mean, that doesn't make it not useful to do. It's just about what you're trying to accomplish,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Like, and as a general thing, if it's not like a high stakes thing or whatever, better to remain open and curious about what might be impacting things as opposed to like
I've got more.
narrowing in your focus.
Yeah, I've got more answers to that. It's not just the weather. I also graduate, and that's
Well, sure, but what you said originally was you're staying up later because you're happier. Now you're talking about different things playing
sure,
into
sure,
why
sure,
you're
sure.
happier.
got it. Yeah.
But we could also say like, so as a general rule, when you get less sleep and go to bed later, are you happier? And you'd be like, no.
Right.
So it's not that it's not correlated.
Mhm.
Mo better, mo happy. Hi, Dad. Love you. Good to see you. I gotta call you. I know. I got a missed call from him earlier. You judging me?
A little bit.
I don't call anybody back
I don't either, actually.
or respond to texts. It's not great. I know it's a thing that I intend to where I don't feel bad about it, but I think it'd be
There are
better to
messages
do it
that
differently.
are 2 weeks old right now that I'm like, that can wait. I just
That's nothing.
that's nothing.
2 weeks. is
Really?
Nothing. Yeah, no, I see things. I think, oh, at some point I got to respond to that, but now it's not a good time.
Mhm.
And then it just doesn't come back, which is a thing that's often associated with ADHD, but it's a thing that all people experience. That doesn't mean that it's not associated with ADHD. We can say people who have ADHD or identify as having ADHD do it at a more frequent rate, or even when the stakes are higher or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's also a function of like, if your house is on fire, nobody's like, I'm going to respond to this text right now, right? Like the context matters also.
Mhm.
And if other things are calling your attention, it makes it less likely that you're going to respond to texts or, anything that isn't whatever's calling
Right.
your attention. And in our culture, we do associate how much attention you pay to something with how much you care about that thing,
Right.
which is a understandable and reasonable association, but a very unfortunate one, because it often involves people like being more and more and more miserable because they're paying very close attention to stuff that they care a lot about, but that paying close attention to just makes them miserable, and don't have the option then of like just being like, I'm going to pay attention to something else, because that would mean that you don't care about it. If you don't feel bad about it and it's going differently than you want, then you don't care about it. Which is silly.
I was like, that's not good.
No, it's not. But that's what we do. Yeah.
Mhm.
If you care, what we mean by that is like you are invested in the outcome.
Mhm.
You have some outcome that you would prefer, or some status or whatever you would prefer to be this. And if it's anything other than that, that falls into what we talk about all this stuff. Like if things aren't the way you want it to be, that's bad.
Mhm.
And that you feel bad about.
Right, but we can always want things to be more.
Not only can we do.
We do, yeah.
And rather than more, I just say different.
Different, yeah.
Because some things we want to be less or whatever, but
Or like different, yeah.
there are always going to be things that if I could snap my fingers, this would be this way instead of the way that it currently is. That doesn't have to mean that the way that it currently is
Right.
is bad.
Right.
And another element of what we're talking about, though, sometimes I and anyone would look at it and say, like, no, but this is bad. Right? It's not about convincing yourself that it's not bad.
Mhm.
There are stuff that happens that is bad to, bad is a relative thing, but I don't like it. It's going to make me upset or sad to pay attention to it. And so another consideration then is, what is the impact it has to pay attention to it? If feeling badly is the cost that you're paying in order to get the value of whatever value you're getting out of it, that might be worth doing. But you got to recognize that the feeling badly is the cost, not the value itself.
Mhm.
And people get that twisted, and we think that the feeling bad is the point. That if I feel bad, that means I'm a good person, and so that's the thing I'm aiming at.
Right.
Instead of it's a cost I'm paying. Because if it's not generating any value for you or anybody, then like, why pay that cost? It doesn't mean you have to say that the thing is not upsetting. It just means that nobody's better off for you being upset by it, unless there is some reason that you paying attention and being upset is beneficial for you or for others.
What would that reason be?
Oh, like all kinds of things, right? Like, generally speaking, the reason that this works this way, like we've evolved for it to work this way, is because for the most part, everything is that, right? They're like noticing something that I don't like, it upsets me, and then I also need to notice it and need information about it in order to do something to change it.
Okay.
There are few things, like historically, in the history of our species, back in the day, there was few things that you would have any awareness of, but no ability to impact. And those few things are things that like loom very large in our like collective history. I guess you could say the collective unconscious, Jungian style, like the weather, for example, storms, the sun and the moon, like stuff that we cannot impact. But even then, like the actual issue there isn't the storm; it's our exposure to it, and we can do something about that, right? But as time has gone on and we're able to become aware of more and more things, I mean, at this point, I could be aware at any point of like a lot of the detailed nuances of an individual person's life that lives, tens of thousands of miles from me. I guess tens of thousands is not possible.
I agree
Given
with
the size
it,
of the world, though, thousands of miles. And that's where like seeing my son fall and scrape his knee, I don't like that. It's unpleasant, and it's important and valuable that I see it because I can then do something about it if I didn't see it. But seeing another child fall and scrape their knee in the past, for example, not even we'll remove distance, but like I see a video of a child falling and scraping their knee that happened like 6 months ago or whatever. That's also upsetting, and can't do anything about it. It's already done. So we get exposed to a lot of things these days that there's no reasonable way to say that I can like directly intervene in this. So then we come up with this other thing, which is we can help with stuff by talking about it, which is true. But not all versions of that are possible all the time, and it's not always worth the cost. In fact, sometimes the way that we talk about things actually makes it worse. The thing we're trying to make better. Unfortunately, a lot of people with whom I agree on very, very many things have gotten into a place where even though everyone's acting in good faith and every step of the way makes sense why people have done what they've done, are doing what they're doing, still ends up resulting in a system where a bunch of us are just making each other scared and sad and miserable and angry, and the problem itself isn't getting better. But at least we feel better about feeling bad about it. What?
Say that again.
Yeah, I'm being vague because I don't want to like bother people. Just the point is, you being miserable doesn't help anybody. Sometimes being miserable is a cost that you pay in order to do the things that do help people. But don't get it twisted and think that just being miserable is in and of itself helpful to other people.
Right.
As to the energy cost reward analysis, I posited that much of today's incivility begins with the excuse of that's just how I am, with an unspoken thought of I don't want to spend the energy to change, and so escalation arguments begins with they started it. Childish, yes. Sure. I mean, I agree that our evaluation, that's part of why I'm being so like cagey with my language here. Our meaning each individual person or us collectively, like our evaluation of the extent to which something is changeable plays a big part in how we think about and feel about and go about doing things, right? And so when we think of something as that is changeable as unchangeable, that can cause problems. And vice versa, when we think of something that is unchangeable as changeable, that can cause some problems. So I agree that there are narratives of like, this thing is unchangeable that get in the way and just make things worse, for sure. I think larger, we've talked about this before, so I don't know how much it's worth getting into all this, but like,
Keep going.
phone okay?
Yeah, phone is fine.
If we tell people that fighting is valuable,
Mhm.
then people will fight. And if we tell people that there's a right and a wrong answer to questions that don't have right and wrong answers, that will incentivize the fight, because if you can show that other people's proposed answers are wrong, then that theoretically is a way to show that yours is right.
Mhm.
But it doesn't actually work that way. I think that is the big thing underlying. I mean, like what you're saying is also a factor. There's many, many factors, but to me, this idea that if we are able to like point out how what other people are doing is wrong or flawed, that will somehow help things. Yeah, everybody gets stuck in we're going to point out the flaws in other people's thoughts and other people's ways of being. And it's not that that never helps. It can in certain circumstances, but not nearly to the extent that people are engaging in it. Now we're just fighting to fight. It feels good to win because it makes you feel, if you can prove that they're wrong, it makes you feel confident that you are right. We like to feel that. But if you're right and they're wrong, then why does it matter? Like, whether they understand that they're wrong or not is irrelevant. If they're actually wrong, that will be borne out, whether they get it or not. And so, honestly, I think some of this is, like I was saying, we are aware of things, all of us, no matter who you're talking about and what their like values are. We are all aware of stuff that is happening that we don't like, that we would rather it be happening differently, that we have little or even no reasonable way to make any kind of an impact on changing how that thing is going. And that sucks, right? To be aware of something bad happening and be like, there's nothing I can do about it. It's terrible. So we try to find things to do about it. And if we are given the option, if we believe that one of the options of what I can do about it is just talk about it a lot, and that can be valuable, then I'm going to talk about it a lot. You know? I personally don't have a reasonable way to say I can do X and that will solve climate change. But I can do these things that like contribute to it, and I can talk about it with people, and if I get everybody to do them in this way and whatever, and there's truth to a lot of that. And then if I go this other way where what I'm doing is arguing against the other side, just in terms of practicality, very unlikely to change people's behavior and make anything better, but likely to make me feel good about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can build or you can fight. Building is harder, more complicated, more costly, and way more impactful. Something you build can impact people when you're not around anymore. And fighting, which includes like fighting to stop other people from building what they're trying to build if it's something I don't want to exist. Whether their position is right or wrong, I simply miss intelligent discussion. I'm not sure that that's something that like used to happen more.
What, intelligent discussion?
Yeah. Civility, sure. You know. And I think those things kind of just get conflated. You know, civil and polite discourse gets conflated with intelligent discourse.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly it can be worth missing the civility, but that's kind of one of the whole issues with the concept of Make America Great Again. Is like, just because people were following people in certain contexts were following certain like social codes about how to comport themselves, doesn't mean that the problems didn't exist. It just means that you know, if you are looking back at that as like when things were great, you just are one of the people for whom you weren't experiencing the problems. You know? There is no such thing as a right position. Accuracy is Utility matters, impact matters. So if we think about right or wrong, then no matter how civil or intelligent the discourse is, it's still about figuring out what's right and getting everybody else to understand that as well. And you can frame that through like, I want to teach and inspire people, which is great. Or you can frame that to, I want everybody to understand how they're wrong and what they've done that's bad. Either way, those the same. We're trying to figure out what's right and then spread that information so that everybody knows it. But you can't do that, which is why it just always turns to fights, because you can point out how the other way is wrong. You can't point out how your way is flawless. It doesn't exist. Anyway, so we can lament things, and that's not, I mean, in some cases, I would say it's unreasonable to respond to something in any other way. But then you got to shift into like building something. Disliking what exists doesn't change it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes paying attention to what exists that you dislike gives you the means, or increases your ability to then change it. But that only matters if you then go try and change it. If we just complain and don't attempt to change it, it doesn't matter. And having said that, the complaint itself is an attempt to change it. It just tends not to be, with the kind of stuff that we're talking about, it tends not to be a very effective way of trying to change things. Not because it's inherently ineffective, but because the problems that, if we complain about them enough, get better, we've done a good job of those ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are some problems that aren't likely to get much better via complaints and criticisms, and those are the ones that are going to, over time, we will complain and criticize more and more and more because they're still around.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that has helped with other stuff, so why wouldn't we keep doing it and say if we do it more, maybe it'll change it? And maybe it will. Maybe I'm wrong. Don't know. I do believe that the most effective way to live a life is to focus on identifying what you want to exist and then building it. That doesn't mean you can do whatever you want or you can make any change you want. But it means that the more of your resources are channeled towards identifying what is it that I want to exist and then trying to make it happen, the better off you and the people that you care about and the things that you care about will be. And the more you focus on what is the stuff that you don't want to exist and how do I fight against it and stop it and destroy it, I'm not saying that's not worth doing. It is sometimes worth doing. But as time goes on, the issues that we're talking about in this roundabout way are more and more likely going to be the ones that doing that doesn't work. That's why it's still going. Just straight up talking about how terrible Trump is and fighting against him hasn't stopped anything. And in fact, it's not very hard to see that it's a very intentional and deliberate strategy on the part of him and the people that work with him to get everyone engaged in that, to try to get people to talk about how terrible he is and fight about how awful he is. I'm not saying that I don't agree with that. I'm just saying that, I've said it before, despair is a tool of the oppressor. If I want to make, we'll say this country, right? If I want to make this country be the way I want it to be, then first I'm going to try and get everybody on board to support me, because the more of us that are working together to make this happen, the more effective it'll be. And then second, anybody that I can't get on board to help me, I need to get them to get out of the way. And despair is an effective way to do that. If you're too sad to be trying anything, if you think that there's no point because I can't be stopped and things will never get better and people are terrible and the world is awful, then you're not going to be doing a lot that gets in my way. And I don't really care if you're sitting talking about how bad I am, as long as you're not getting in the way of what I'm trying to do. All successful revolutionary practices are rooted in joy. Always. It's part of why this more recent wave of things of oppression has been so successful in the way that it has. It's because part of what it has done is convinced us all that feeling joy means that we are bad people.
Oh, so you're saying rooted in joy, but in a different way? What do you mean rooted in joy?
I mean that you can't do anything or change anything if you don't have joy.
Got it.
And I mean that literally. Like if you look at historical revolutionary movements, there are very core pieces of what is happening that is rooted in like celebration and joy. Because otherwise you can't do anything. Or at least not for long. And then your opponents just have to persist, because you will drop out sooner or later, one way or another. Yeah, there's a reason that I do what I'm doing. I mean, there are many reasons I do what I'm doing, but I care a lot about, as I keep coming back to this idea of like, our culture teaches that feeling bad is good and feeling good is bad, because it is the thing that leads to stagnation more than anything else. That way, anybody who is thinking of themselves as a good person and wanting the right things and whatever is too busy feeling bad to be as effective as they could otherwise be. And if they enjoy too much or have too many things, and they feel guilty about it and stressed, and so that limits their ability to like become powerful or gather resources. And then I'm not saying those people aren't good people or don't want the right things or whatever, but then the models that are given to others who agree with them are like, look how cool this person is, they believe in the right things, and they are self-sacrificing and guilty and stressed and miserable and deny themselves things all the time. So if you want to be good, you got to do that too. We don't tend to have a lot of cultural models of this is a person who is very happy and comfortable and very helpful and keyed in on being as like good as possible about listening to what people are experiencing and doing their best to help with it. Even when we do have models like that, look how successful this person is. We then change it into that by then saying like, and they worked so hard to get there. So if you want to be successful like them, you also have to work very hard, by which we mean do a lot of very difficult and unpleasant things. Anything you enjoy isn't working. Certainly not working hard. So if you tell everybody that you can change anything if you work very hard, well, no matter what somebody does, you can always say, well, it hasn't worked because you haven't worked hard enough yet. And there will be a limit to how hard a person can work. And wherever they hit that limit, you just say, well, if you worked harder, which prevents anybody from looking at like actual, legitimate, useful things to be doing, as long as I'm chasing the rainbow.
My eyes are getting tired from looking at the window.
Yeah, it's so bright.
It's so bright. I'm like,
that happens to me when I sit in that seat.
It's weird. So I'm having a hard time responding. So I'm like, ugh. Note to self, don't sit here again.
Wear sunglasses.
During the stream?
Why not? Again, that, I know it's silly, but to me, that's such a clear connection to what we're talking about. Like, well, the practical implication, according to what you just said, is that looking out the window is causing your like eye strain or some sort of visual load that prevents you from being able to engage as meaningfully in the discussion as you would like to. And putting sunglasses on would theoretically, at least possibly, resolve that. But so the practicality of it is it's worth trying. But the idea of like, no, that might be weird or people might not like it.
You never did it.
Yeah. I didn't think about it. Also, while I do notice the light coming in the windows, it didn't impact me in the way that you're saying that it prevents you from engaging.
That's true. Now I'm like, Brandon's got to move his whole TV setup because I don't want to wear sunglasses.
I am going to move the whole TV setup.
What are you thinking?
I'm just going to go over there. we can talk about this off stream, but we will. We have some physical changes coming up. We're expanding office space and hiring some new therapists and things will be reconfiguring some.
Interesting.
But in the meantime, let's have a conversation. And if that means that you need to wear sunglasses, then wear.
I don't want to.
It's a good example of the kind of thing we're talking about. Which is fine.
Yeah.
This is not a high stakes thing.
Uh-huh.
But a very good
gonna be
example of
okay.
what we're talking about is people are like, no, I'll make the sacrifice of continuing to experience this distress because, I don't want to come off as uncaring or rude.
I'm also like, Brandon's got it. It's fine. And it's always
True in the sense that like you can engage to whatever extent and I will make this work. This is not set up in a way where it is an obligation on your part to have to engage in a particular way. I wouldn't
Right.
do that. But that doesn't mean that this is how you want to engage or how you want to experience. It doesn't mean it's how the viewers would want you to engage and experience. I could.
what?
I was gonna start saying some stuff, but that's gonna like put you in a position where you feel some pressure to have to put on the sunglasses, and I don't want you to.
Oh,
feel
trust
that.
me, I won't.
That what we're talking about is an accommodation.
Mm.
That a person is struggling to do the thing that they want to do and that is wanted of them, and the only thing that is getting in the way is something that can be easily rectified with an accommodation, but that accommodation is outside of the norm, and so people might judge that person and think of them as weird and different. And so
And also, your sunnies are not as cute as mine.
I believe you. But in practical terms,
Yeah.
not relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, people should feel free to utilize whatever it is that allows them to do the things and experience the things that they're trying to do and experience. And whether other people think that's weird matters, because other people's opinions of us matter, but doesn't always mean it matters enough that it's worth changing what would have been the optimal thing to do.
Well, I'll rewatch this video and be
This is
like,
the kind of thing that keeps autistic people out of the workplace, for example,
Mm.
because I don't want to wear my big over ear things. Everyone will think I'm weird or rude or whatever, so I just don't do it at all. This is a big part of what the despair is a tool of the oppressor statement means, is that if you get people to think that engaging in things the way that would work for them is a bad way to do it, then they don't engage at all.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Makes me think of no hats and school dress codes too.
Why?
I'm just thinking about wearing things that people say you're not allowed to wear. That was the connection there. That's it.
Sure. But nobody said you're not allowed to wear sunglasses. I'm literally your boss.
I suppose that's true.
So nobody has said, I'm not saying you must, but nobody has said you can't.
True. There's no moment where I'm actually considering it. I want you to know.
No, I don't expect that there is. That's not what I'm aiming at.
You're just aiming
I
at.
don't really care whether you do or not.
Mm-hmm. What?
I do want you to engage
Yes.
in the ways that you are saying you would otherwise engage.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're unwilling to put on sunglasses, fine. But I am also deliberately leaving more space for you to say things. Not trying to put you into too much distress.
I know.
I'm trying to like balance it out.
I
So
know.
it's some, but not too much.
I know. Now I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna ask you what you're thinking about. Okay, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about the box, the game that Brandon unwrapped on the couch in front of you and how he didn't put the top back on. That's
It's off camera. I wasn't going to ask that, but it's a fair guess.
just trying to use my skills. Okay, just talk about what you're thinking about
Great.
instead of what you think we should be talking about.
Cool. But what you were thinking about is what you think I would say, which is in a roundabout way still what you think I think we should do.
Help me.
Insufferable.
Insufferable.
It is true.
Ay, ay, ay. Have you ever won a raffle, Brandon?
The first thing that pops in my mind is Susan won a raffle one time.
Mhm.
And I think we were together when that happened. I mean, I know we were together as in a relationship when it happened. I think I was at the event with her, but I can't remember for sure.
Okay.
But that's all I can think of.
Gotcha. We had a big raffle at the hospital that I work at, and somebody in my office won, and it's just so funny. Of like all the tons and tons of people that work there, she got it, and I just thought it was very silly. And then I thought about when I won a TV in a raffle once, and how strange that was to like the probability of that happening. And then I don't know.
Yeah, strange, sure. What do you?
I don't know. I'm just trying to bring up a topic that I've been thinking about. There's no substance to it right now.
Well, why are you thinking about it?
Because it happened yesterday. And I just thought of some, I don't know.
Well, a lot of things have happened between now and then. What prompted that? And what prompted you to ask me if I had won a raffle instead of just
Talking
telling
about
the
that.
story?
Well, I was thinking about how it's hospital week this week and how they have the days set up, you know, to celebrate people who work at hospitals, but how all of those I kind of like rolled my eyes at. And then the raffle one, I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder what the prize is. And then I thought of it.
What was the prize?
We don't know yet. She's not going
She
to
won a raffle but doesn't know what the prize is?
Correct. She's like, the email said, come to the office and come pick it up.
That's ominous.
It's so ominous. And I have to wait till Wednesday when she's back in.
Cake is a lie.
The cake is a lie. What is that?
It's a Portal reference.
The cake is a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be a very big meme, but you know, that was old, early days of internet memes.
The only Portal reference I think of, or not even reference, just I think of the little, whatever they're called, going, I'm different when you pick them up.
Oh, the little cubes, the
Yeah.
companion cubes. Portal is an amazing game. Such a good video game.
It does make me a little nauseous playing it though.
Why?
The angles, because then you're like twisting through and like.
Didn't you play Superliminal though? Wasn't that you who told me in the past?
Superliminal?
Who wasn't
I
it?
played Portal, but I didn't play Superliminal. I don't know
Somebody. Really?
What is
Superliminal is the one where you're like in a dream. You're put into your character has been put into a
Oh,
dream.
yes, the black and white one? No. What is this?
Well, there are parts that are black and white, I guess. The opening of the game is like you get the little intro of like you have been put into a dream for this experimental dream therapy
Are
thing.
you sure it's not Coma?
This is called Superliminal. And somebody here played it, and I
It might have
swear
been
it was
me.
you.
I just don't, I'm not remembering it.
And you get these little, like as you go through the game, there are these little like boom boxes with tapes in it that will play messages, presumably from the outside world.
Yes.
And at first, there are a lot of them that are being like trying to make things seem normal, even though things seem off. And then finally, they admit that like, okay, something's gone wrong, and you're stuck in this. This is
Yes.
how it's supposed to be.
I have played this.
And it's all about perspective.
But I get nauseous playing games. Like a lot of them. And that's why Stardew Valley is very nice to me. It's just stationary. It's just whatever. And the other ones, I like the mechanics and things, but it does, like, if I'm watching someone play, I'm, like, nauseous.
I would hate watching someone play more than
Playing it.
playing myself. The same reason that I'll get nauseous if I'm in a car but not driving.
Yeah.
You know, having some ability to control the movement and correlate like the movement of your body to like things you are doing
Mhm.
makes it easier than like unpredictable.
That's true. I feel like, or I've noticed that I will watch someone play a game first, and then I will get nauseous, and then I'm like, I could never play that. But I wonder if I just started instead of watching them, if I would feel different.
Well, almost definitely.
Yeah,
Because if nothing else, if you were doing something that started to make you feel nauseous, you would just stop
right.
or slow it down or
Right.
like you would take it at the pace that would work for you without feeling nauseous.
Totally. Your dad says talk about chocolate cake.
Okay. I don't know what to say about chocolate cake.
It's not my favorite.
It's not my favorite either. Chocolate's a little rich for me generally. My father-in-law dropped off some chocolate cake for us a couple days ago. My oldest son's birthday was yesterday. He turned, it's funny, I was going to say 11. He turned 9. But my first impulse was to say 11. I know that's not true. He had an ice cream cake.
Ooh.
And those things are so hard to cut.
They're so thick.
It's tricky because you got to leave it out to thaw a little bit. But the center of that thing is going to be hard as a brick while the edges of it are melting. So there's no way to do it that's not going to require 1,000,000 pounds of force to get cut through.
It was my birthday last week, and my sister sent me Wicked Good cupcakes, which are cupcakes in jars. And the 2 flavors she picked out for me were so bizarre. And she's like, because remember we were looking at the website and you said that would be an interesting flavor to try? And I was like, that didn't mean it's a flavor I would actually want to eat. It just meant it was an interesting flavor to and it was just cute how she thought I really wanted that flavor, but I was like, huh.
Why were you being euphemistic about it? Why not just say that looks gross?
Well, I didn't know if it looked gross. I was like, maybe. It was like a s'mores kind of.
You're saying here that what you said was, that looks interesting to try, but I am not interested in trying it.
Oh, I didn't say that.
So are you interested in trying it?
I guess so, but of only choosing 2 flavors and that's the one you chose, I'm like.
Is the ones that you said you were interested in trying?
I know.
As opposed to what? What else could she have? Were there any that you were like, I really want that one?
I said, oh, that one's good.
Like you had it in this?
Yeah, I had it. She didn't do those.
Yeah, well.
Because I've already had them.
Yeah, and there are others that you're like, I am interested to try these. You didn't say that exactly, but that's the impression. It's like, I would be interested to try that. And so she's like, here's this thing that you wanted to try.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very nice of her.
It's really nice of her.
That's an example of how closely she would. This is a fun example, actually. Because she was listening to you very closely.
Yeah.
But through a series of events, you interpreted it as a thing where she wasn't really paying attention.
And you know what? If I had liked the flavor, maybe I'd have a whole different story right now. I did, but I don't really like the flavor. And I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's other things that are tied in here, right? Like you don't want to tell your sister, hopefully she doesn't watch the stream. You don't want to tell your sister that you didn't like the flavors that she sent, which is silly. Because she specifically chose the ones that you said you were interested to try over the ones you said you've had and liked.
Right.
So she almost definitely would like to hear your thoughts on it. But you've interpreted this all under a larger umbrella of gift giving, which is that you are supposed to like what a person gives you.
It's a nightmare of thing to think.
What is?
That I have to like the thing that people give me.
Well, most people think that.
Yeah. It's not fun.
But see, when a person is giving you a gift, they do want you to enjoy or feel good in some way, shape, or form. But what the gift is a different. In this case, the gift she was giving you was the experience.
That's true, and I
trying
did.
A cupcake,
when
not whether you like the cupcake, but
Yeah.
you got the experience of trying.
And she saw me when I got the box. I was like, oh my gosh. So she got it. She got my response.
No, she didn't, because you didn't tell her.
Okay, I'll
you
tell
think of
her.
them.
I'll tell her.
Put yourself in her position. If you were her and
Yeah,
your
I
sister
wanna know,
saw
I wanna
that,
know.
like more than just a gift of like, hey, I think about you and
Yeah.
I care about you. It's also like, this is also a prompt of something for you and I to talk about.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All these things where people like with wonderful intentions and then just interpret things in slightly different ways, as always happens, and ends up with people like doing the opposite of what each other wants. This happens in relationships all the time where people think like they don't listen, they don't care about what, like I've asked them to do this thing 1,000,000 times and they just haven't. They never listened to me or whatever. And meanwhile, that person is doing like a bunch of other stuff that you've asked them to do and you're not paying attention to that. Or the way in which you thought you were being very clear about asking, which would have been clear to you, but to them they interpreted it in a completely different way. Like this example where you're somewhat euphemistically saying that you're interested,
Silly.
but also like somewhat legitimately. But because you're remembering your interpretation of what you were saying rather than what you actually say and don't see the possibility of another interpretation, it turns into this whole other thing where someone who was listening very closely to you, you interpret now as they didn't really think much about what
They
you
were
were
thinking
saying.
so much. She was thinking so much.
It doesn't mean that she was right or that you should like it. That's not.
Yeah,
right, but
no,
like,
I can't change my taste buds.
this kind of stuff comes up in especially parent-child relationships when the children are like teens and older, and romantic relationships all the time. It happens in friendships too, but we don't talk about it as much in therapy when it's happening with friends, because generally friends can communicate through this stuff and work it out on their own much more easily than people, like those same people can't, or they struggle to do it when it's a romantic relationship or a parent-child
The
relationship.
stakes higher, or what's deal?
Different norms, and yeah, stakes are higher, and yeah, because it requires communication, and the more fraught the communication, the more difficult that is. And so we tend to evaluate, like in a romantic relationship, for example, if somebody does something we didn't want them to do or didn't do something that we did want them to do and we thought we were clear about it, whatever, that gets connected oftentimes to this, like, are they the right person for me? Like, is this even a good relationship? Which makes the stakes high. And now it's not about like, if I'm like, okay, here are 2 boxes. In this box might be something that will kill you in 30 seconds, or might be $1 million. And in this other box is a sandwich. Right? You are now going to be thinking about the box that could be $1 million or could kill you, to the extent that you don't even notice the box.
Really? I'm just noticing the sandwich right now.
In this hypothetical, sure. But if there was actually a box right there that could 50-50 kill you.
Said it was 50-50 gonna kill me, Brandon, I'm choosing the sandwich.
Sorry, I'm not saying which box do you choose.
Oh, what am I thinking
I'm
about?
saying which box are you thinking about more and paying more attention to.
Thinking about the one that's wild card, yeah.
And that could be great or could be terrible. So when there's something that happens in a romantic relationship, and there's 2 possibilities. Either it's a very normal run-of-the-mill miscommunication and we just got to like clarify it, or this could be revealing of something about them and or something about me and or something about the way we interact that could mean that this is like not a good relationship, or could mean that this person is perfect for me. Like, either I'm with the person that I want to be with, or I have to break up with this person. Then it's hard to remember that there's this other route over here about like, let's just ask.
Right. The sandwich.
Also, unfortunately, there's reason beyond that we pay less attention, is because if we miscommunicated about it in the first place, there's a decent chance that in trying to talk about it, we'll miscommunicate about it again. And in a romantic relationship, a miscommunication is much more likely to turn into a very upsetting argument than in a friendship. Not that it never happens in a friendship, but you go through enough of those experiences and you disincentivize from like, no, I'm not even going to try and clarify this.
Exhausting.
Sure. Yeah. You know, it's honestly, so our culture is obsessed with the version of this that is physical. That's part of the reason I always like use physical metaphors. It's because we collectively will not shut up about like, working out is hard and tiring and draining, but if you do it, the rest of your life becomes easier. We phrase it as like, working out gives you energy or whatever. But it's just, if you do this difficult and taxing thing in a very like concentrated way, then all the normal day-to-day stuff of your life becomes much easier. You're in less pain, you know, like just more energy, whatever. Is exactly the same with this stuff. And I guess I'm talking about it through the lens of therapy, but I just mean like cognition and emotion, whatever, same deal. That, yeah, it's exhausting to think about a thing, but if you're doing it in a certain way, or it's exhausting to have this kind of conversation, but if you're doing it in a certain way, it makes everything else in your life easier. But in our culture, when we talk about the physical side, we're all talking about, oh, I should work out, I should work out, I should work out. And then when we're talking about the mental, the cognitive, the emotional side, we're generally like, no, I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know as soon as I say it, sounds most likely like it's directly at odds with what I was saying before, where it's not always worth thinking about things that are upsetting to you. And I get that. It's a limitation of language that those concepts are so easy to link. Although, again, pointed out before, it's not that you should never do it. It's just that you want to be working out is helpful to a person, presuming that you do it in a certain way and to a certain degree. Do it too little and it doesn't have the benefits. Do it too much and you're likely to injure yourself and make everything worse than if you hadn't done it at all. There is a window, and we are, again, collectively very aware of that in physical terms. There's industries on industries that are entirely about like, we've identified like microscopically the exact limits of the window, how to optimize as much without causing any of the downside, But then it comes to thinking and feeling things and communicating with people, and we're like, meh, just figure it out, everybody. Which is fine.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be optimized.
Yeah.
It's more just interesting that, what we are more aware of and what we are less aware of. But yeah, in the same way that even if you, like, okay, let's say you don't work out. It's not by any means to say that all people must work out. That is not I am not currently and have not been for quite some time doing any kind of workout. I'm not saying that all people should do that. But part of the reason that we do it is to make up for some differences between like how our bodies have evolved and the contexts of our lives, right? Like we evolved in the context in which we were constantly moving and using our bodies to do things all day long, all the time. And now we don't have lives generally that are like that. So we have to kind of opt in, and even because we're trying to fit in this physical activity in a smaller window rather than just constant movement throughout the day, we like intensify it in these small windows to try and compensate to some extent for that. But the flip side is that if we're using our bodies less than we were intended to, nobody, I swear, it's one of those things like, why is nobody making this connection? If we are using our bodies, as everyone's talking about all the time, we're using our bodies less than we evolved to, then what are we doing more of than we evolved to? Like, we're not just doing less, we're not existing for shorter portions of the day.
Right.
So, and if what we're saying is like, look, we have the same tool set that everyone's always had, and we're using these tools all day long, but we use the hammer a lot less than we used to. Well, then what other tool are you using? Nobody wants to talk about this part because it's cognition. And if we all know that we're using our bodies less than we were evolved to, then we'd all have to acknowledge that we are thinking way more than we were evolved to. And just like the body, that doesn't mean it's not doable. It doesn't mean it's not even optimal. Like, there are reasons we've made these changes. Not everything is good. Certainly not everything is perfect. But in large part, I, nor most of us, would say, yeah, I'm going to go live like prehistoric human life now, where I have to like walk around all day outside. And, if I get sick, that's it. Whatever.
That's it.
So same deal. If I'm not a person who's like, we shouldn't talk as much as we do. I talk and I think all the time. But if you expect that to be free and easy and automatic, you're in for a rough time. Yeah, talking with me about this stuff, it is exhausting. It's exhausting for me also. Less so because you get used to things, right? Just like it's less exhausting for a personal trainer to do the workout they're leading you through than for you to do it.
I always think about that, of like how much work this person has done to be able to lead this class with less distress than I am experiencing.
Well, and part of it is like, that's what they're doing all day. This is what I'm doing all day.
Right.
And if they're doing that all day, they've also learned, as part of what they've learned, they've also learned how to like balance things out in the rest of their life so that works.
Yeah.
And same here. I recognize that thinking and communicating has a cost to it, and my life is structured around that. Even though I am, in this metaphor, in shape like a personal trainer is, and can do it more efficiently and whatever, I still have limits, and I just build around that instead of thinking I should just be better. I should do more. I should push harder.
Right.
But other people have a tendency to think they should push harder, and then part of what makes the conversation so difficult sometimes then is they don't have much left for it in this moment because they've been spending it all. It's part of what we were talking about before off stream, about related to stuff we're talking on stream, about if you want to help people to be happy, you have to be happy. Not in the sense of like you have to get sleep or you can't do work, although that is also true. If you're not happy, you can't continue to do things of much import or impact. But even if we erase that and say, let's imagine that you could be miserable and still be very effective over a long period of time helping other people, that's still not great, because those people then that you help are looking to you as like, this person's awesome, and they're miserable. They're super helpful and they're really great and they're miserable, and then they're going to think that in order for them to be helpful, they also have to be miserable. It's part of what plays into what we're talking about, this cycle where everybody is justifiably and understandably upset, anxious, scared, angry. I'm not dismissing any of these concerns or saying that any of these feelings are invalid. They are valid, they are reasonable, understandable, maybe even important, at least certainly in some cases, for sure important. And when that combines with certain other things and results in a system in which, to some extent at least, people are engaged in public displays of misery as a way to exhort others to action, right? Like almost like the call to action sometimes is like, look how angry I am about this. You should also be this angry about this. And I'm not arguing with the reasoning and the logic. I'm pointing out in practical terms, that means that the people who are most willing to agree with you are now spending their energy on anger as well. And the people who would potentially be interested in agreeing with you have a cost they have to pay of being very angry, which limits the number of people who are going to agree with you. If you offer them the options of you can do the right thing and be miserable, or you can be happy and do the wrong thing, some number of people are going to do the wrong thing and be happy. Anyway, I don't remember how we got to that. What you said was exhausting.
No. I thought we were talking about cake.
It's all cake. If you don't do challenging things, nothing changes. And that doesn't mean that like.
So relate that.
Go ahead.
Relate that to suffering, because I think that's what we left off on last week about like it's not
Suffering is not noble.
Noble thing to suffer, but you do have to work hard to get change to happen. So I'm wondering how we can distinguish or.
Yeah, the key point there is the cost and value.
Mm-hmm.
Paying a cost is not cool. It's not great. We all wish you could get the value with paying less or none of a cost.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever thing costs whatever it costs.
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't look at things as being a cost and a value, it's two separate things, but just one big mishmash of this is good or this is bad.
Right.
We then fold in the cost as a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That like the versions that I can put out that are going to be very recognizable and very easy for people who are likely to watch this stream to agree with is like it builds character, that kind of thing.
Suffering builds character.
It's good for you to, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Rub some dirt on it. That kind of like, you're in pain. That's good for you. That's good for you, actually.
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for us to say that. But then there's other versions of it where we would then be like, no, but that one's true.
What do you mean that one's true?
People who haven't experienced depression don't understand it.
Mm.
It's not that that's an untrue statement, although it's a very difficult statement to actually parse into something that could be shown to be accurate or not. But the implications of it, of like, therefore, having been depressed makes you somebody who can help other people, and if you haven't been depressed, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you are not paying attention and feeling bad about this stuff that's going on, then, man, I wish I had the privilege to hide my head in the sand too.
Okay. Can we distinguish or differentiate what suffering is between just working hard, sometimes experiencing some not so fun things from working hard, but suffering is like
Working hard would fall under the umbrella of suffering.
mm-hmm.
It's a sub. So, okay, working hard,
Mm-hmm.
what we generally mean when we say that is doing things which are unpleasant, painful for you to do,
Mm-hmm.
but that have some value to them, right?
Sure.
So all we're really saying when we say people have to work hard is you have to pay costs, which is true. No matter what you're doing, you have to pay a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it is also true that like things which are unusually big or unusually impactful or whatever are also more likely than not going to have unusually high costs to pay. So this ridiculous thing that we do in our culture of hard work is the key to success. That it's two things. That hard work is both necessary and sufficient for success. You cannot be successful unless you work hard. And if you work hard, you will inevitably be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those statements are true unless you really want to like be cherry picking what you mean by success and hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, nobody's like, yeah, I was working really hard on having a great time the other night. I was really enjoying myself at the party. It was really hard work. Hard work, we're talking about something that the experience of it is painful to some degree. And pain, we have certain like discomfort and taboos around using the term pain, including me, because what we call discomfort is also pain. It's just we say like a low level of it is discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just a low level of pain. Discomfort means the lack of comfort, and what we're talking about when we say I'm uncomfortable is the presence of a signal that we don't enjoy.
Then what the hell is suffering?
Suffering is just anything, like doing anything, experiencing anything that is painful.
Okay.
People, depending on the context in which the word is used, mean more specific things than that.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be hard to argue reasonably that anything which involves a person experiencing pain, any level of pain, could not be called suffering.
Mm-hmm. But you don't have to suffer to be working. I don't know
Well,
why I'm caught on
you
this.
do have to be suffering to be working hard, because that's what we mean by working hard.
But it's not a noble thing to suffer.
It is not a noble thing to suffer. There are many noble endeavors that, in order to accomplish them,
One hand.
suffering will be involved. But that does not make the suffering.
Totally. Got it.
That's like saying
I'm
that
there.
spending money is a noble
I'm
thing.
there.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it's fine, right? This isn't about being pedantic and like correcting people about like, well, but the problem is how that plays out over the long term, and as messages get disseminated, where then people are, if we say that spending money is a good thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that bad people don't spend money and good people do spend money, then the nuance of that, like, well, yes, but it really depends on what you're spending the money on. Like, it's not that spending money is in and of itself
Mhm.
good. It's just, if you are willing to spend money in order to accomplish this, then that means that you're a person who values this enough to be willing to pay that cost.
Mm-hmm.
That gets lost in talking about it all. And what people end up thinking is like, well, as long as I'm spending money, I'm a good person. as long as I am upset, I'm a good person. Like, no, it's the value that matters. Being willing to pay a high cost in order to get a high value is great. But paying the cost is not the value in and of itself.
Right.
There's also, we're talking right now about suffering that is like the hard work version of suffering. Suffering that is to some extent optional or like under a person's control to engage in it. But another category that falls under suffering is like bad stuff happening to you that you didn't choose, and it's not a cost that you're willing to pay. It's just a bad thing that happened, a painful thing that happened. And in that same case, again, we on the other side of it, if that happens to somebody, it's very useful after the fact for that person and for people who care about them to be able to frame it as like, well, you know what, but here's at least something good that came out of it. That's why if it doesn't kill you, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like that, it's in that vein of like, okay, we can all acknowledge this sucked. If we can find some real way to connect some value to it, that makes it your experience from here forward better. Doesn't change what happened then, but it can take, I mean, we'll take an exaggerated example, right? Like, it is theoretically possible for a person to go from like, I am cursed, my life is terrible, and terrible things will always happen to me, and then get a different narrative about what happened and what came of it into like, no, I am a champion, I am a warrior, I control my own destiny, which is a very useful change to me. So it can be very useful then to talk about how you learned this, you became resilient or whatever. Again, though, the nuance gets lost in how we talk about it, and then just becomes a thing of like, people who have suffered are stronger, people who have not suffered are not as strong. This is like plays into a lot of people's guilt about being privileged. I haven't suffered very much in my life. I feel really bad about that. It's not something that a person should feel bad about.
Right.
You can feel bad about other people suffering. Why would you feel bad about your lack of it? Isn't your goal for those other people to also not suffer as much as they're suffering? Again, what are we teaching people here? That like, I'm a person who has not suffered very much and I feel very bad about that. So even if you don't suffer very much, you're still going to be miserable?
Yeah.
Or if you're the person, you have to be miserable? Like, if I'm a person who is dealing with like the worst elements of oppression, I don't really give a crap whether or not you feel guilty about the nice stuff that you have. That does nothing for me.
Right.
But if you have nice stuff, if you have money and the ability to like rest and learn and communicate and build community and work on things that take a long time to pay off, then use that and help me. You sitting around feeling bad, I don't care.
Right.
Again, if I am a privileged person looking at what people deal with that are much worse off than me, I am likely to feel bad about that. And if I'm doing things to help them, I'm looking at what's happening, paying attention to what's happening. So it is true that the people who are helping the most are also those who are like most upset by what they're seeing, both because they don't like it and because of how close they're paying attention to it. But that's the cost. That doesn't mean paying attention and being upset is valuable in and of itself. It is not. Honestly, it's another way for people to take themselves out of the action. To be satisfied with, I'm doing my part by being really miserable. People say it all the time. There's nothing I can do about it. But then if you say, well, then stop paying attention to it. No. And just pretend like it's not happening. No. You don't have to pretend reality is different than it is, but you also don't have to pay close attention to it. Well, if everybody did that, then no one would do anything. Sure, but you just said you're not doing anything anyway. So what does that matter? If you're going to pay the cost, make it worth it.
I like that, Brittany.
It's really the other way around. identify what is worth doing and then pay the cost, not pay a cost first and then make some way to make value out of it. Because that's what people are doing. We do cognitive gymnastics and narrative, storytelling stuff to say, this suffering that I'm experiencing is valuable in this way.
Sure.
In some vague way, it is helpful. And I can't say that it's not. Nobody can. That's why that argument persists. It is entirely possible that just me talking about it does change what someone thinks, and that changes something else in some vague, abstract way. But that same logic pertains to literally anything and everything, right? Like things you do unknowingly could still help with stuff. So identify the thing that seems most reasonable for you to presume will result in something valuable and engage in that. Honestly, like, give me the choice between either you get to think of yourself as a good person, but you don't help very much, or you help a lot, but you think of yourself as a bad person. I'm going to choose the second.
What's the second one?
In that case, I said you can either feel like you're a good person, think of yourself as a good person, but don't help very much, or think of yourself as a selfish person, but help. I'm going to choose the second. And that thing right there is a false binary, and it's the one that we're offered. The best option, the one that I am trying my best to choose for myself and to offer to other people and encourage them to choose, is you can think of yourself as a good person and help. In fact, if you want to be as helpful as possible, thinking of yourself as a good person is very useful in that endeavor. And what I mean there is being happy. Allowing yourself to do the things that you enjoy, allowing yourself to not have to force yourself to constantly be working hard. Or the irony of people with whom I very much agree on so many things. The irony of a lot of us saying things about how terrible capitalism is and the grind and hustle culture and how they work you to the bone and like only care about the value they can extract from you. And then we turn around and evaluate a person's worth based on how much value other people are getting from you in different terms, in different ways, but still, like, as though humans don't have a right or a reasonable expectation or that it should be allowed for people to be happy without having to justify it. But how are you going to help other people be happy if the lesson that you are repeating to everyone all over the place is you cannot be happy unless you have earned it, unless you have suffered enough to be okay with it. Now I can rest because I can't do anymore. Sucks. It really does. It doesn't have to be like that.
My eyes. It's awful.
Look with your special eyes. Another old meme.
What's that one?
It was a commercial about some company that like ships glasses to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just filmed in like an old, like melodramatic 1940s kind of style of, like, I need the glasses, my special glasses for my special eyes. And they're right there. And she's like, look with your special eyes. And then it became a meme. Look with your special eyes. You can't free people from a jail cell that you are stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to break other people out, you've got to figure out how to break out. If you want people to be happy, liberate them from oppression, you have to become liberated from oppression. Feeling guilty about your privilege is a different flavor of oppression. It means you're prioritizing what the other people who share your privilege or have similar levels of privilege think about you over the experience of people who have much less privilege than you.
Prioritizing what people with privilege already have.
Yeah, what is prioritizing what your peers think of you.
Mm-hmm.
the other people around me who have similar levels of privilege will think I'm a good person if I'm aware of it. But again, the people who you're theoretically concerned about helping don't give a crap.
Right.
They're not even aware of it. This is, I'm just getting real political today. Whatever. It's all linked. You know, people ask me sometimes like how I became a therapist, especially like, you know, younger people, or more commonly people who have kids or friends that are like teenagers who are interested in becoming therapists. There's a long story and there's a million ways to answer the question, but I was doing what at the time I called academic coaching, which is like what I would now call executive functioning coaching, but specifically for people who were in school, mostly college kids and high schoolers. But I was doing it in a way like the clientele I was working with and tended to be, as almost everyone who's doing this kind of work is, tended to be that like the parents are the ones hiring you, and then you're working with the kids. And over, parents and kids, because I am me and I was effective and authentic and whatever, would just keep wanting to bring up with me like things that I thought of as being more therapy oriented. You know? And I didn't think it was ethically appropriate for me to engage in that without having trained in it. These are thoughts I would have different opinions now, but at the time. So that's when I decided to go back and get my therapy degree, because everything is related. Everything is intertwined in a person. You can't change one thing without changing other things. You can't change the way you do homework without changing other stuff in your life as well. And you either get some conscious intentionality around what other changes you're going to make, or you do this thing that everybody tends to do where you just believe that I should be able to just change this. And if you do change that, it means that the other changes that are happening in response to that are things you're not aware of and are not choosing. Or more likely, you just fail to change this because nothing else is changing. And I would always say it's like if you took one piece out of a puzzle and said, can you change the shape of this? Like, whatever I do to that, it's not going to fit back into the puzzle. You have to change the stuff around it too. So politics and philosophy and therapy and psychology and all this stuff, we can abstractly separate it out in the same way that we can abstractly separate one molecule from another. But in practical terms, like that molecule, all the molecules in my body are all like functioning in tandem in some way that makes them more or less inseparable without messing some stuff up.
I'm curious, I don't know if you wanted to share this, but you didn't, what your beliefs are now about that when you didn't think it was ethically appropriate.
Oh, you do know what my beliefs are now about that, which is it's not a bad thing for me to have gone and gotten more training, learn more. It's always helpful to learn more. But to say I can't help with this because I don't have the right training or the right information is just a way for a person to not help.
Yeah.
I was worried I would make mistakes, but it doesn't matter how much training you get, you might make mistakes. If you're going to help, you have to take on the possibility, in fact, I would say the certainty of failure. If you're going to help, you're going to actually do some stuff that makes things worse. For some people, or sometimes you can't accomplish anything in a larger scale, like over time, without sometimes making the opposite of what you're trying to make happen.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's just, I didn't think about or know things in this way. Part of what prompted all this was going and getting that training and realizing, okay, so no, I did know a lot of that. And the stuff I didn't know doesn't like fundamentally change the underlying ideas here. It's just, it's useful to know, but at the end of it, it's still like, no, nobody can answer that question of like, this is the thing that's happening. And if you do this, it'll change in this way. You just got to try. Yeah, I was starting to get political and then wanted to say that thing about how all this stuff is connected. Politics, to me, by the way, I guess worth clarifying, is about power dynamics, the relationship that people have to power, and the relationships, or the way in which power plays into people's relationships. I don't mean the specifics of like modern American governance. And obviously, I'm aware that mostly when I'm talking about politics in this context, people are going to think I'm talking about Republicans versus Democrats, and I'm aware of that. And I like most of what I say works in that context. But politics is not, it's an intrinsic, like, it's a label we have applied to something that happens in all human interactions.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just the specific thing of the way that this country's government works right now.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, power. I'm just going because your eyes hurt too much to
Me
interject.
too. I feel like I'm like,
Actually, we should maybe wrap it up because I don't want you to get a headache.
that's true. And I do have to be at a computer for the next 2 hours. So
Can I put a quick button on this? Power, like all these things, it's a label we apply to something. In this case, it's a construct. It's not an observable thing. And you could say, well, what about this? And whatever you're talking about with observable stuff is either observable things which traditionally accompany or indicate that someone has power,
mm-hmm.
or the effects of the fact that someone has power, not power itself. Power itself is just an idea. And the idea, what we mean by it, is the ability to shape one's environment to match what one would want it to be. The more power you have, the more it is true that you can make reality become what you want it to be. The less power you have, vice versa. And if two different people or two different groups of people are actively working towards making reality be mutually exclusive ways, you want it this way, I want it this way, and both those things can't happen, then whichever of those groups has the more power is the one that makes the change. The other way of saying that, the reality is one of those groups ends up theoretically succeeding in making the change, and that's how we would identify, well, that group had the more power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about changing your environment to be what you would want it to be. But I cannot tell you the number of clients, friends, staff, colleagues who, whenever they start to think about becoming powerful in any kind of a way, financially, interpersonally, whatever, immediately go to like, well, I guess I'm just a capitalist asshole then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your options are to be powerless and make no change, or to be powerful and only make bad changes.
Mm-hmm.
That idea that power corrupts is absurd. Like, power is not a binary that you have or don't have. And obviously it is not true that the more of it you have, the worse of a person you are. There are some things that are true here, like power, what we're saying is the ability to make things be the way you want it to be. Well, if what you want is to be as powerful as possible, then the more power you get, you use that to get more, and you use that to get more, and it builds on itself. So it is true, generally, I can say pretty much exclusively, it is definitely true, that the people who have, as individuals, the most power are people who have prioritized just getting as much power as they can. Because if your priority is anything else, as you gain power, you use it to do that other thing. So even if your power increases, which it often does, it's not increasing at the same rate to the same extent as people who are just trying. Like, it is by definition true that billionaires are people who want to or believe that it is useful to have billions of dollars. If you don't think that, like I don't think that, right? Even if the things were happening in my life that make people billionaires, if that was happening, I would be using that and spending it and distributing it so that I would never become a billionaire. But that doesn't mean that I'm not accruing power or that accruing power makes you bad. It's just about what you choose to use it on, right? The people who want you to believe that power corrupts are corrupt people for two reasons. A, it stops you from getting in my way. Because, like, sure, I have everything I want and my life is the way I want it to be and I can make things be the way I want it to be. but trust me, you don't want this because I'm a bad person. You are better than me. I get that you don't like get all the things that you want, but you are a good person
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a bad one. So is that going to dissuade everybody? No, but the more someone really cares about being a good person, the more it's going to dissuade them. And two, there's no point in holding me accountable for anything because it is the power itself that corrupts. Do whatever you want with me. Whoever takes my place, and someone will take my place. The king is dead. Long live the king, right? Do whatever you want to me. Whoever takes my place will be just as bad as me, if not worse. The devil you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even my fault. It's just what happens when you get power. Trust me. If you try to get power, you'll see it happens to you too. So you should have empathy for me. And they construct narratives about like, at least I'm the one that's like willing to take on the difficulty and the pain of dealing with making hard choices.
Noble of suffering.
But no, it's a lie. It's having more power. Whoever you are right now, think about somebody that you think in history accomplished some really great stuff. That person, by definition, had a lot of power. Remember, power is the ability to change things. If you change things in big ways, you had a lot of power. And you think that the changes they made are good. Thank goodness they had that power. Thank goodness they had the power to organize that many people or steer the conversation in that direction or invent that thing or distribute that thing or whatever it is. You, I, we all collectively would not be better off if that person had said, I don't want this much power. I'll do what I can in my own small ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tempted to play into the narrative that everybody has in our culture and say, stop making excuses. No. I do that sometimes because it's...
Saying stop making excuses?
I play into this narrative of like, what you're doing is bad and you should do something different instead because that's what people think. And so that story works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were talking earlier about the Book of Mormon musical, and I would say the point of that is the point that the musical is trying to make is like, doesn't really matter if a story is real or factual or not. What matters is like the impact that it has. If somebody is hurting somebody else and you make up a story and now they stop hurting that person, who cares if that story is true or not? It's about the impact. And so same deal here. Like, I don't like this idea that the way to get people to make changes is by making them feel bad about what they're currently doing.
Mm-hmm.
But because we are all in this culture and we have been shaped in that way, it is often a very impactful, effective way to go about things. So I use it sometimes. I try to do as much as I can to pull things in the direction I think they should go. But so I could say like, so stop making excuses about, oh, I had so much growing up and I can't possibly understand what other people are dealing with. And, you know, I should get out of the way and let other people take the lead and whatever. All of that is good, but it's also abstract and like you're applying it in the wrong way if you're just not doing it. But I don't want to. I'm too tired to keep playing with that right now. So instead, I'll just say like, human life is valuable inherently. No one human life is more valuable than any other because they are all maximally valuable. When you hit the max, everything that hits the max is exactly the same. All human lives are as valuable as a thing can be, which includes yours, not just the other people that you might be thinking about and caring about. It includes yours. And whatever you want to see for other people, if you see yourself thinking differently, behaving differently, aiming at different outcomes for yourself than for others, that's a good sign that it's worth paying attention to what's going on here. Why do I think people should be happy, but I think I should be upset? Why do I think people should have nice things, but I feel bad about having nice things? Why do I think people should prioritize rest, but I work myself to the bone? feel bad about resting. I'm not saying you're bad or that you're wrong. It's just I want that to prompt curiosity for people. Something is up there. And as a general rule, there's a very famous saying in Christian cultures and cultures like America that are heavily influenced by Christian cultures, even if it's not entirely Christian itself. But the scriptural reference of if you have done this unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. Right? The idea that however you treat anybody, imagine that's how you treat the person that you most care about. Would you still do it that way? Walk a mile in their shoes, the golden rule, all these ideas. And there's a corollary to me that's important that doesn't get discussed in our culture as much, which is the inverse. That if you're doing it to yourself, imagine doing it to somebody else.
Yeah.
What you want to happen for other people, how are you going to make that happen if you're not making it happen for you? And I'm not saying everything's under your control and you can make anything happen. I'm saying what you're aiming at. If you're not trying to be as happy as you can make your life be, then are you really going to try and make other people as happy as they can be at? Or do you think there's a limit? This is as much as you deserve, and anything more than that's too much. Anyway, we'll wrap up. Any thoughts?
I had thoughts. I was thinking, it's not going to be able to wrap us up though, but I was thinking about when I was I was in church, like in high school, Methodist. I'm not religious really anymore, but I remember we were all praying and everyone was talking about how they were praying for other people. And I was like, oh, I just pray for myself. And I thought that was a very interesting, I was very focused on making me feel better before other people. I don't know if there's something there or not. But.
See, here's what's funny to me in that story.
Okay,
you did not care about making yourself feel better before other people.
Okay.
You didn't think about, I'm almost certain, you can tell me I'm wrong, but you didn't think here are the things I would want for myself, and here are the things I would want for other people. And
Sure.
I'm going to just say the ones I want for myself and not those other ones.
Uh-huh.
You just were talking about the things that you wanted.
Right.
It didn't occur to you for whatever reason that oh, this is a time where it's helpful or appropriate to think about what other people want.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, so there's a segment of Huckleberry Finn that deals with this, where he's praying as I want this and I want that, it's a wish list kind of a thing. And his very religious, is it his aunt? His caretaker, I believe it's his aunt, but his caretaker is I could be making this all up. Some of it I know is there, but this next part maybe it's not there.
Okay.
Finds out and is kind of aghast and is no, that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
Uh-huh.
You're supposed to be praying for what you want to see in the world or whatever. And I remember that not being very clear to me as I read it. What?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
What is difference between what you want and what you want to see or what you want to happen for other people or whatever? And to me, it's ironic because it is what we're talking about. It's the opposite, right? Theoretically, what people are saying is, well, if you're praying just about what you want for yourself, that's selfish. And so you should pray what you want for other people, and that will be better. And control is not a binary, right? It's not about control, it's about influence, but I have a much larger ability to influence my own thoughts and feelings and behavior and experience, the things that happen to me and around me. I have much greater ability to influence that than I do for other people. So wouldn't it theoretically be more useful for me to think about what are the things I am wanting to have, what are the things I'm wanting to be, than to focus so much on.
I think that's where I was at. I was I can work on me. I know me. I don't know.
Maybe. How old were you?
15, 16.
It's possible. Most likely you didn't think about that either.
Yeah.
Most likely it hadn't occurred to you, or the way that it had been taught to you was that it was about, thinking about what are the things you want to, or whatever. I've heard people refer to prayer or meditation and things like that as organizing your energy or directing your energy, setting intention,
Sure.
right? There's secular versions of it too. And so if it's taught to you in that way, then yes, the default like you're going to be taught to do that. That's how I was taught to pray. You say thank you for the things
Mm-hmm.
that you're grateful for, and then you say the things that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, at least when I first was taught anyway, there was zero thought policing about like some things are good to want and some things are bad to want. But it also was made clear, as I think it generally should be, and I know this isn't the case, but generally should be made clear. It was made clear to me, at least. Just because you pray for something doesn't mean it's going to happen. So, like, don't go into this thinking, like, what I say is, I'm controlling reality, so I better be really careful. It's just a way of, like, thinking through and setting your intentions. And if you believe in certain things, it can be about, like, and through doing that, you're influencing things via, potentially requesting to a higher power or influencing energy networks or whatever. But either way, it's still the same thing. You're just like, in whatever way I can have impact, I'm aiming that impact in this direction. It might be enough to make it happen. It might not be. It might not make a difference. But, and yeah, so again, like those same people who are like, no, you're supposed to be focusing on what you want for other people. And so what did they want for you in that moment? To feel bad about what you were doing?
Thanks.
They wanted you to think that you were selfish? If you asked them, they probably would have said, no, that's not what they wanted. But if you asked them what they did want, probably wouldn't be a mistake. It's just like you didn't think about the other options. They aren't thinking about either.
Right.
We're just doing.
Right.
You can't think about everything. For the most part, we just do what we do. We do what we see other people do. We do what we're told to do. We override that by thinking about things, but narrow window for that.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do any number of things that we do?
Olivia.
Anyway.
I'm going to go to bed. And if I go to bed, I'm going to take 20 minutes and then do a session.
Cool. We can talk about that. Good to be with you all. We'll be back next week.